Get that terrorist-looking woman out of here immediately. Her hijab and Arabic mumbling are disturbing our real guests. Hotel manager Sandra Pierce's voice echoed through the marble lobby of the Grand Meridian as she pointed at Amina al-Rashid, who sat quietly reciting evening prayers while cradling her designer handbag. What Sandra didn't know was that the terrorist she wanted removed was wearing a $15,000 custom abaya and owned 73% of the hotel chain that was about to fire her in front of 50,000 live viewers. If you want to witness how 30 seconds of religious hatred became the most expensive discrimination in hospitality history, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Because what happens next will destroy careers and change an entire industry forever. But let's go back to where it all began. The Grand Meridian Hotel's lobby gleamed like a palace as Amina al-Rashid entered through the revolving doors, her pearl-embroidered hijab catching the chandelier light. Her handcrafted abaya whispered against the marble floors, each golden thread worth more than most people's monthly salaries. The afternoon call to prayer had arrived, and Amina sought a quiet corner to fulfill her religious obligation before the 3 p.m. board meeting that would change everything. Hotel manager Sandra Pierce watched from behind the reception desk with eyes that had been trained by years of Fox News and social media algorithms to see threats where others saw faith. The sight of Amina's hijab triggered every prejudice Sandra had carefully cultivated since 9/11, every stereotype about Muslims that cable television had burned into her consciousness. Amina found a discreet spot near the floor-to-ceiling windows and began her prayers with the quiet dignity of someone whose faith ran deeper than any earthly concern. Allahu Akbar, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the lobby's gentle classical music. Her movements were graceful, reverent, completely absorbed in spiritual communion that should have been invisible to rational observers. But Sandra heard those Arabic words and felt her blood pressure spike with manufactured terror. Muslim woman. Arabic prayers. Expensive clothing that didn't match Sandra's assumptions about who deserved luxury. The narrative wrote itself in her prejudiced mind like a bad thriller novel where every Muslim was a potential threat. Excuse me, Sandra approached with the false authority hotel managers reserved for problem situations. You can't do that here. This is a public space. Her voice carried across the lobby loud enough to make wealthy guests look up from their afternoon tea and business meetings. Amina paused her prayers, looking up with dark eyes that held surprising patience. I'm simply praying. Islamic faith requires 5 daily prayers, and this is a quiet moment of worship. Her English was perfect, educated, carrying the slight accent of someone raised in multiple countries. Prayer. Sandra repeated the word like it was profanity. Ma'am, you're making other guests uncomfortable with your activities. She gestured dismissively at Amina's prayer position, as if devotion itself was somehow offensive to hotel operations. A young woman near the concierge desk, Emma Chun, began recording on her phone as her journalist instincts recognized the obvious discrimination unfolding. Her viewer count started climbing as she whispered commentary about what she was witnessing. Which guests? Amina asked calmly, glancing around the lobby. The businessman reading his Wall Street Journal hadn't looked up once. The elderly couple sharing afternoon tea was completely absorbed in their conversation. A family with children played quietly in the seating area, unbothered by whispered prayers. Nobody seemed uncomfortable except Sandra, whose discomfort stemmed from hatred rather than genuine concern. Sandra's face flushed with embarrassment and rage at being called out publicly. Listen here, she snapped, abandoning all pretense of professionalism. This is an American hotel operating under American standards. We don't allow Islamic activities in our public spaces. The irony was staggering. The Grand Meridian was actually owned by an international hospitality group, making Sandra's nationalism even more absurd. But logic had abandoned her the moment she'd seen Amina's hijab and heard Arabic prayers. Islamic activities, Amina repeated quietly, standing with fluid grace while adjusting her hijab. You mean prayer? The same prayer Christians do in church, Jews do in synagogue, Buddhists do in temples. Her voice remained steady, but something steel-cold was building behind her eyes. Sandra pressed her advantage, playing to the growing audience of guests with phones now recording. Get that terrorist-looking woman out of here immediately. Her hijab and Arabic mumbling are disturbing our real guests. The words hit the marble lobby like gunshots. Emma's live stream exploded past 5,000 viewers as comments flooded and expressing shock and outrage. Did she just say terrorist? This is 2025. Someone call the news. Amina remained perfectly still, processing Sandra's assault on her faith and identity. Her designer handbag, Hermes, worth more than Sandra's car, hung from her wrist like a quiet testament to wealth that Sandra's prejudice couldn't see past the hijab. Security, Sandra called over the intercom, her voice cracking with authority and fear. We have a situation in the main lobby. Possible trespassing. 2 guards emerged from behind marble pillars, moving toward Amina with the practiced efficiency of people accustomed to removing unwanted individuals. But something about Amina's reaction didn't match Sandra's expectations. Most people confronted with security would argue, plead, or retreat. Amina simply reached in her handbag and retrieved her phone with movements so calm they seemed almost supernatural. The caller ID displayed simply "legal team," as Amina answered with a voice that carried dangerous quiet. Yes, we have a situation at the Grand Meridian. The discrimination incident is happening now, being recorded by multiple witnesses. Sandra lunged for the phone. You're not allowed to make calls while security is responding to your disruption. But Amina stepped away smoothly, her expensive jewelry catching the light as she moved. Approximately 50 guests witnessing, Amina continued into her phone, hotel manager using explicitly anti-Muslim language, calling me a terrorist for praying. Her voice remained steady, but Emma's live stream chat was exploding with viewers who sensed something significant was about to unfold. The security guards hesitated, something about Amina's complete lack of fear unsettling them in ways their training couldn't explain. People being removed from luxury hotels didn't make calm phone calls to legal teams. They didn't wear jewelry worth more than houses or carry handbags that cost more than cars. Sandra felt the first flutter of uncertainty, but her prejudice was too strong to recognize the warning signs. She had no idea that the woman she'd just called a terrorist owned the hotel, employed every person in the building, and was about to deliver the most expensive lesson in discrimination that the hospitality industry had ever witnessed. The revolution would begin with a phone call that would change everything. The voice on Amina's phone carried through the marble lobby with the unmistakable authority of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. Amina, this is Robert Hassan from Legal. We're monitoring the live streams. The entire acquisition team is watching this discrimination in real time. Sandra's confidence wavered as she caught fragments of the conversation, her prejudice temporarily overridden by survival instincts. 50,000 viewers and climbing. Amina replied calmly, her eyes never leaving Sandra's increasingly pale face. The hotel manager just called me a terrorist for praying. The entire incident is documented. She adjusted her hijab with one hand while maintaining the phone with the other, movements so graceful they seemed choreographed. Security guard Miguel Rodriguez approached cautiously, his partner James Wilson flanking Amina's right side. But something about her complete composure was setting off alarm bells in Rodriguez's experienced mind. 12 years of hotel security had taught him that people being forcibly removed didn't make calm phone calls to legal departments while wearing jewelry worth more than his annual salary. Ma'am, you need to end that call and come with us, Rodriguez said, though his voice lacked conviction. Wilson noticed Amina's Patek Philippe watch, her diamond earrings, the way her custom abaya fit like it had been tailored by European designers. Nothing about this situation matched their usual problem guest scenarios. Sandra sensed her authority slipping and amplified her performance for the growing crowd of recording guests. Officers, this woman has been conducting suspicious Islamic activities in our lobby for 15 minutes. She's refused multiple requests to stop her religious disruption and is now making threatening phone calls. Emma Chen's live stream exploded past 15,000 viewers as comments flooded faster than human eyes could track. She's literally just praying. This is insane discrimination. That manager is going to get fired. Why is she so calm, though? The voice on Amina's phone grew more urgent. Legal has prepared immediate termination documents for any staff involved in religious discrimination. Board members are en route to handle this situation personally. Sandra caught enough words to feel ice forming in her veins, but her prejudice was too strong to process the implications. Threatening phone calls. Amina repeated Sandra's words with dangerous quiet. I'm speaking to my company's legal department about religious discrimination in the workplace. The same legal team that handles acquisitions, mergers, and corporate policy. Her tone remained steady, but something had shifted in her expression that made Wilson instinctively step back. A hotel guest near the elevator bank, businessman Marcus Thompson, began live tweeting the incident to his 50,000 followers. Watching religious discrimination at Grand Meridian Hotel in real time. Muslim woman being harassed for praying. This is getting viral fast. His tweets were being retweeted by major civil rights accounts within minutes. Sandra's radio crackled with confusion from the front desk. Sandra, we're getting calls from news stations asking about a discrimination incident. Social media is blowing up about our hotel. But Sandra was too deep in her prejudice to recognize the warning signs screaming around her. In that call now, Sandra shouted, lunging toward Amina's phone with desperate authority. You're disrupting our guests with your terrorist communications. The word terrorist echoed through the lobby again, making several guests visibly recoil from Sandra's obvious hatred. Amina stepped away smoothly, her expensive handbag swinging with practiced elegance. Robert, she said into the phone, the hotel manager just attempted to physically interfere with our legal consultation. Add assault to the discrimination charges. Rodriguez felt his career prospects shifting beneath his feet. He'd seen enough viral discrimination videos to recognize when situations were spiraling beyond control. Ma'am, Sandra, maybe we should verify some information before taking further action. Verify what? Sandra snapped, her face red with rage and embarrassment. She's a Muslim woman disrupting our lobby with foreign prayers. The only verification needed is her removal from this property. Emma's viewer count hit 25,000 as she whispered breathlessly into her phone. The hotel manager just said, foreign prayers like prayer itself is suspicious. This is getting insane. Major news outlets were beginning to monitor her stream, recognizing the viral potential. The voice on Amina's phone carried across the lobby one final time before the call ended. Board meeting moved to immediate emergency session. All department heads to report for termination review within 1 hour. Sandra heard termination review and felt her first real moment of doubt. But her hatred was stronger than her reason. Security, arrest this woman for trespassing and making terrorist threats. I want her removed immediately. As Rodriguez reluctantly reached for his restraints, Amina's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID was visible to everyone nearby. Grand Meridian Corporate CEO office. Sandra's face went completely white as the pieces began assembling in her prejudiced mind. But it was already too late. The woman she called a terrorist was about to answer a phone call that would destroy her career in front of 30,000 witnesses. The reckoning was one phone call away. The phone rang with the distinctive tone reserved for executive communications, cutting through the lobby's tension like a blade. Grand Meridian Corporate CEO office glowed on Amina's screen as 30,000 viewers held their collective breath. Sandra's face had drained of all color, but her prejudice still fought against the mounting evidence that she had catastrophically misjudged the situation. Amina, this is David Al-Rashid. The voice carried through the lobby with unmistakable authority. The board is watching the live streams. We have 35,000 witnesses to religious discrimination occurring at our flagship property. The words, our property, hit Sandra like physical blows, but her hatred was too strong to accept what her ears were hearing. Rodriguez dropped his restraints, the plastic clattering on the marble floor as realization crashed over him. 12 years of security work had taught him to recognize authentic power, and the woman they'd been threatening was speaking to corporate leadership like an equal, like family, like someone who belonged at the very top of the organizational chart. The situation is being documented comprehensively, Amina replied into the phone, her voice maintaining that supernatural calm while chaos erupted around her. Multiple angles, complete audio, and a live audience that includes major news outlets monitoring the streams. Sandra made one desperate attempt to salvage her authority. I don't care who you're calling. This is still my hotel, and I'm still removing you for conducting terrorist activities in our lobby. But her voice cracked with growing desperation as the crowd of recording guests stepped visibly away from her toxicity. Emma's live stream exploded past 40,000 viewers as comments flooded faster than servers could process. She's talking to the CEO. This woman owns the hotel. Sandra is so fired. This is legendary. Major news networks were now embedding Emma's stream directly into their breaking news coverage. David. Amina continued speaking to the phone while looking directly at Sandra. The hotel manager has now used the word terrorist 3 times to describe Islamic prayer. She's also attempted to physically interfere with our legal consultation. Her tone remained steady, but everyone in the lobby could sense the gathering storm. Wilson, the second security guard, backed away completely. His instincts screamed that they were witnessing something unprecedented, something that would reshape careers and possibly the entire industry. "Ma'am, Sandra, I think we need to reassess this situation," he whispered urgently. But Sandra was beyond reason, beyond professional judgment, beyond any rational response to mounting evidence. "I don't care if she's calling the president. Muslim prayers are not allowed in this lobby, and I'm the manager." Her voice rose to near hysteria as her world began collapsing in real time. The voice on Amina's phone grew colder, more dangerous. "Sandra Pierce, employee ID 2847, hired March 2019. Amina, would you like me to read her complete disciplinary record over speakerphone?" The offer hung in the air like a sword over Sandra's career. Marcus Thompson, the businessman live tweeting, paused mid-tweet as his corporate instincts recognized the power dynamics shifting seismically before his eyes. His followers had grown to 75,000 as the story went viral, but he suddenly realized he might be witnessing something that would be studied in business schools for decades. "That won't be necessary," Amina replied with devastating calm. "Ms. Pierce's actions today speak clearly enough. The 35,000 witnesses can judge her professionalism for themselves." She looked directly into Emma's camera as she spoke, addressing the growing global audience watching discrimination die in real time. Rodriguez found his voice, though it shook with dawning horror at what they'd almost done. "Ma'am, Ms. Al-Rashid, we sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding. We were following management instructions, but we should have verified the situation more carefully. You threatened to arrest me for praying while Muslim," Amina replied quietly. There was no misunderstanding. There was only prejudice disguised as security protocol. Her words carried across the lobby with surgical precision, each syllable documented by dozens of recording devices. Sandra's phone rang with increasingly frantic calls from corporate communications, legal departments, and crisis management teams. But she ignored them all, too deep in her hatred to recognize that salvation required acknowledgement of her catastrophic error. The voice from Amina's phone delivered the final blow. Emergency board meeting convened. All department heads to report immediately. Sandra Pierce's termination documents are being prepared as we speak. The clinical efficiency of corporate justice was terrifying in its swift brutality. Emma's viewer count hit 50,000 as she whispered into her stream. "I think we're about to witness the most expensive discrimination incident in hospitality history. This woman they try to remove, she's not just connected to corporate. She is corporate." Sandra finally looked around the lobby, at the 50,000 people watching online, at the security guards backing away from her, at the guests recording her meltdown, at the Muslim woman she called a terrorist standing with the quiet dignity of someone who owned everything Sandra thought she controlled. For the first time in 15 minutes of documented hatred, Sandra Pierce began to understand exactly what she had done, and exactly who she had done it to. The revolution was complete. The reckoning was about to begin. Corporate executives materialized in the Grand Meridian lobby like avenging angels, their tailored suits and grim expressions cutting through the marble space with surgical precision. David Al-Rashid, CEO of Al-Rashid Hospitality Group, led the procession with the quiet authority of someone who controlled billion-dollar empires. Behind him, legal counsel Margaret Hassan carried termination documents that would reshape careers in minutes. Sandra Pierce stood frozen as the reality crashed over her like a tsunami. The Muslim woman she called a terrorist wasn't just connected to corporate. She was corporate. Amina Al-Rashid, daughter of the company founder, owner of 73% controlling interest, and the woman Sandra had tried to have arrested for praying. "Ms. Pierce, David's voice carried across the lobby to Emma's 65,000 live viewers. "You've just discriminated against my daughter in front of 70,000 witnesses. I trust you understand the implications." His tone was clinical, surgical, the voice of someone who had destroyed careers with less provocation. Rodriguez and Wilson backed against the marble pillars, their security badges suddenly feeling like anvils around their necks. But Amina raised her hand with surprising grace. The security officers followed management instructions. Their behavior, while misguided, wasn't driven by personal hatred. Her mercy was more devastating than revenge. Sandra's voice cracked as she made one final, desperate attempt to save herself. "Mr. Al-Rashid, sir, I was protecting hotel standards. I couldn't have known she was family." But her words only deepened her grave, admitting that religious discrimination was acceptable unless the victim held power. "Hotel standards," Margaret Hassan repeated while opening her legal portfolio. "Ms. Pierce, would you like me to read the discrimination complaints filed against this property? All buried by previous management, all creating ongoing liability exposure." Sandra's face went gray as she realized her prejudice was part of a documented pattern. Emma's live stream hit 75,000 viewers as major news networks began broadcasting her feed directly. CNN, Fox News, and BBC were sending crews to the Grand Meridian, but the real story was unfolding in real time through social media. Hashtag Grand Meridian Discrimination was trending globally. David addressed the crowd of recording guests directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed religious discrimination that will cost this property approximately $15 million in legal settlements and reputation damage." The number silenced the lobby, making the financial cost of hatred tangible and immediate. Amina finally stood to her full height, her designer abaya flowing like liquid silk. "Ms. Pierce, your termination is effective immediately. Security will escort you from the property within the hour." Her voice held no anger. Only the cold finality of justice served at the appropriate temperature. Sandra collapsed into a nearby chair as 15 years of hotel management evaporated before her eyes. "My children, my mortgage, my career," she whispered to no one in particular. But Amina's expression didn't soften. "You should have considered those consequences before calling me a terrorist for practicing my faith." Marcus Thompson's Twitter followers had exploded to 200,000 as his live tweeting documented corporate accountability in real time. Watching a hotel manager get fired for Islamophobia while 75,000 people stream it live. This is justice in the digital age. His tweet was retweeted thousands of times per minute. Margaret Hassan handed Sandra her termination papers with the efficiency of someone who had processed dozens of discrimination cases. Terminated for cause. No severance. No references. Personal liability for civil rights violations estimated at $2 million. The legal precision was more terrifying than any emotional outburst. David turned to address Emma's camera directly, speaking to the 80,000 viewers watching history unfold. Al-Rashid Hospitality Group will implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training at all properties within 30 days. Ms. Pierce's behavior will become required training material for every hotel employee in America. As security began escorting Sandra toward the exit, she turned back one final time. "Amina, Ms. Al-Rashid, I'm sorry. I was wrong." But Amina's response cut deeper than any rejection. "Your apology doesn't erase the word terrorist from 70,000 recordings. It doesn't undo the moment you try to have me arrested for praying." The lobby fell silent except for the soft clicking of phones recording Sandra's walk of shame toward unemployment and potential bankruptcy. Emma's stream reached 85,000 viewers as the most expensive discrimination incident in hospitality history concluded with swift public justice. Sandra Pierce's career ended where it had reached its toxic peak, in the Grand Meridian lobby, witnessed by nearly 100,000 people who would never forget the cost of hatred disguised as hotel policy. The revolution was complete. The transformation was just beginning. 6 months after Sandra Pierce called Amina Al-Rashid a terrorist for praying, the Grand Meridian Hotel had become a completely different institution. The marble lobby where discrimination had thrived now displayed elegant signs in multiple languages. "All faiths welcome here." Prayer rooms available 24/7. "Dignity is our highest standard." Emma Chin's viral live stream, which had reached 127,000 viewers during the incident, became the most-watched discrimination video in internet history. Her citizen journalism launched her career with CNN, where she now covers civil rights stories across America. That day taught me that ordinary people with phones can create extraordinary change, she reflected during her primetime special on corporate accountability. Sandra Pierce never worked in hospitality again. Her discriminatory rant, preserved forever by dozens of recording devices, became required viewing in diversity training programs nationwide. The $2 million civil rights settlement bankrupted her personally, forcing the sale of her home and complete career change. She now works in retail, her LinkedIn profile a cautionary tale about the permanent cost of hatred. But the real transformation occurred within Al Rashid Hospitality Group itself. David Al Rashid invested $50 million in comprehensive anti-discrimination initiatives across all properties. Every hotel implemented prayer rooms for all faiths, hired diverse staff, and required monthly bias training. The Al Rashid Standard became the industry benchmark for inclusive hospitality. Rodriguez and Wilson, the security guards who had threatened to arrest Amina, became success stories of redemption. Both completed advanced cultural sensitivity certification and were promoted to diversity compliance officers. Their transformation from unwitting participants in discrimination to advocates for inclusion inspired other organizations to embrace second chances over permanent punishment. The financial impact was staggering and positive. Al Rashid Properties saw revenue increases of 31% as travelers of all backgrounds chose hotels that demonstrated authentic commitment to dignity. Corporate bookings from diverse companies rose by 47%, while the viral incident generated over $300 million in positive brand recognition globally. Amina's calm response to institutional racism became a Harvard Business School case study titled Leadership Under Fire: How Dignity Defeats Discrimination. MBA students worldwide analyze her strategic thinking, her refusal to respond with anger, and her systematic approach to creating lasting change rather than seeking personal revenge. The legal precedent was equally significant. The Sandra Pierce case established new standards for religious discrimination in public accommodations. Federal courts cited Amina's experience in 12 subsequent civil rights cases, expanding protections for Muslim Americans practicing their faith in commercial spaces. 3 years later, the Grand Meridian hosted the International Conference on Religious Tolerance and Hospitality, with Amina delivering the keynote address in the same lobby where she had been called a terrorist. Change doesn't happen through quiet dignity alone, she told the audience of hotel executives from 47 countries. It happens when dignity meets documentation, when witnesses choose courage over comfort. The most powerful moment came during questions, when a young Muslim woman in hijab asked, "Ms. Al Rashid, do you think hotels are safe for people like me now?" Amina's response echoed through the marble space that had once been a site of hatred. "Sister, you belong everywhere your dreams and faith take you. And now the whole world knows it." Sandra Pierce's toxic 30 minutes had been transformed into 3 years of systematic reform that reached every corner of the hospitality industry. The American Hotel and Lodging Association created mandatory bias training for all management personnel. 12 major hotel chains implemented similar dignity-first protocols. The Sandra Pierce Prevention Act passed in 8 states, requiring transparency in discrimination incidents at public accommodations. But perhaps the most meaningful change was invisible. Muslim families no longer braced for confrontation when checking into hotels. Children in hijabs played freely in hotel lobbies without worried glances from staff. Business travelers found prayer rooms and halal food options as standard amenities rather than special accommodations. Marcus Thompson, whose live tweeting had amplified the story, parlayed his viral moment into a social justice advocacy career. His organization, Digital Witnesses for Justice, trained citizens to document discrimination safely and effectively. Emma's stream and my tweets prove that everyone with a phone can hold power accountable, he explained during his TED Talk on citizen journalism. The Grand Meridian lobby now features a small plaque near the windows where Amina had been praying. On this spot, discrimination met its match. May all who enter find dignity, respect, and welcome regardless of faith, race, or background. Hotel guests often photograph the plaque, sharing images with captions about the power of standing up to injustice. 5 years later, Sandra Pierce published a memoir titled The Most Expensive 30 Minutes: How Hatred Destroyed My Life. The book became a cautionary tale about the permanent consequences of discrimination in the digital age. Her story was assigned reading in business ethics courses, human resources training programs, and civil rights education curricula. Amina Al-Rashid continued expanding her family's hospitality empire, but every new property opened with comprehensive diversity initiatives from day one. Her approach proved that inclusion wasn't just morally right, but financially profitable. Stock analysts cited Al-Rashid Hospitality Group as the gold standard for ESG investing in the service sector. The viral video continued generating impact years later. Young activists used clips of Sandra's discrimination and Amina's dignified response to train new civil rights advocates. "This is how you respond to hatred" became a common caption on social media posts featuring Amina's calm professionalism in the face of Islamophobia. Emma's final live stream update, 5 years after the incident, reached 2 million viewers. The woman they called a terrorist for praying changed an entire industry through patience, documentation, and strategic action. That's what real leadership looks like. The revolution that began with religious discrimination in a hotel lobby had transformed into a movement that reached every corner of American hospitality. Sandra Pierce's moment of hatred had created decades of systematic change, proving that individual prejudice, when met with organized resistance and authentic accountability, could become the catalyst for lasting justice. What discrimination will you document today? Share your stories in the comments below. Subscribe if you believe dignity isn't negotiable anywhere. The next Amina Al-Rashid is waiting for their Emma Chun. Will that be you? Justice had transformed an industry. The real work would never end.